Hello, and today I am going to be asking one of the most asked questions in all of retro history, or retro video game history. One of the biggest questions that most people ask is, which is better, Genesis, or, I don't have the actual console, but I have the closest thing to it, the Super Nintendo. Now, some people do ask if the NES is better than the Genesis, but it's more of Super Nintendo. 16-bit systems. Now, the Super Nintendo does have an eject button, power reset, as the usual. And the Genesis Model 1 even has a headphone jack in the system. Turn up the on-off switch. The reset button I really don't like. Says 16-bit power light and 2 controller boards. They both had 2. So I'm going to be looking at controllers, designs of the system. I won't be able to show you what an actual Super Nintendo looks like, but I think it's pretty obvious who looks better. The Genesis. The Genesis looks a lot better than the Super Nintendo. A lot. Not purple and gray. It's strange. So, one very notable thing about the Genesis, and one thing that people say makes the Genesis worse, but I think it makes it better, is the 32X. This is one of my reasons that one thing the Genesis has that Nintendo don't. 32X. This odd-shaped mushroom is really cool. I like some of the games on it, even though I only have 4. And 2 of them I don't like. 2 of them I do like, though. So, a very good port of Doom. A very good port of Star Wars Arcade. Good graphics. And there's another thing that makes the Genesis really good. I'm going to go get that and the controllers. Another thing that makes the Genesis better than Super Nintendo. Genesis does what Nintendo don't. With CD games. Who doesn't like some good old-fashioned Surgical Strike? I mean, I know these games are laughable by today. I mean, they really are. Me and my dad bought these games just to laugh at them specifically. We bought these full motion videos just to watch the bad acting. So this thing is really cool. Gave me a lot of laughs. I really like it. It's really nice. And not only can you laugh at it, but there are also decent games on it. Sonic CD. Might take me a while to think of another good game for it. So, 2 things, 32X, Sega CD, that makes the Genesis better than the Super Nintendo. So, let's see if the Super Nintendo can redeem itself with the controllers. Super Nintendo looks a lot better than it. Genesis looks a lot better than Super Nintendo. I do not have the original controller, but this is pretty much the same thing. So, the original controller, I don't think looks as good as the Genesis controller, but I'm going to go more on feel. And this feels pretty good. I love shoulder buttons. Sorry. But, shoulder buttons are very nice. I wish they would have used them more. They really don't use them at all. So, next thing I'm going to be looking at is, well, of course, Genesis controller. The buttons do feel kind of weak, but I'm sure when they were original, they felt a lot better. A really nice D-pad. I don't like the Super Nintendo D-pad a lot. See, that D-pad's kind of one whole piece, and this D-pad doesn't have, like, right there in the corner, doesn't have a piece there. Like that does it. Yeah, it's circular shape. I don't know. I like the D-pad a lot more. Start button. It doesn't have a select button, but it does have 3 buttons. So, this has 3 main buttons. not counting, start and select and junk, this has 6. You got your 4 on the front and those. So 6 compared to 3, that means this was a whole lot better for Street Fighter. But going on what's comfortable, also Mortal Kombat, but going on what's comfortable, I don't know. I mean, I like the Genesis controller more. Well, it's more comfortable, but the Super Nintendo one is still very comfortable, but it's better for fighting games. So I'm going to go with Super Nintendo controller, because it can do a lot more actions without having to press start to switch your moves in Street Fighter. So, another thing. One thing that makes Genesis kind of one-up Nintendo is this. This plug is the best thing you could have. Super Nintendo has its own plug. Now let me tell you about this plug. There are an infinite amount of systems that have this plug. Let me name off some of them. Master System, Intellivision, ColecoVision, Atari 2600, 7800, and the Jaguar. I know the Jaguar is not good. I think the 3DO might have the same port. The CDI, I don't think it has the same port. But this port is so common. It's great. So many systems use this port that a replacement controller, it would be hard not to find one. So, I don't know. I don't see anything that the Super Nintendo is a whole lot better at. Another thing. Cartridges are so much smaller. And one thing people might not think about is the library. The Super Nintendo ended as soon as the Genesis was discontinued. They were both discontinued, probably around the same time. Or no? Yeah, they probably were. Maybe Genesis a tiny bit longer. But when you look at when they came out, the Genesis came out 3 years before the Super Nintendo, which means it has a longer library, and you have a whole array of Sega CD and 32X games you can play. You got a whole bunch of Mushroom and CD games. So, I think because of the Sega CD, 32X, the common plug, and the overall styling is better. The only thing the Super Nintendo really beats the Genesis in is controller. The controller is better. Oh wait! I almost forgot. I'm gonna be back with something that's gonna change that whole I'm back, and I have the 6-button Genesis controller. That's right. What can Super Nintendo say now? A better D-pad, better feeling buttons, and it has 6. Just as many. Well, it doesn't have select, but really, it has all the same amount of action buttons. So, yeah. Take that, Nintendo. And this controller feels really well, too. So, I hate to say it, but the controllers probably are equal, because they're both about as comfortable if you're counting this one. So, Genesis is better than or equal to Super Nintendo in every way so far, but Super Nintendo's about to get a little better. Now, the Super Nintendo, when you look at the actual aspects of it, it cannot run as fast as the Genesis can, but everything else is better. It can have more colors, more storage. So, its overall power is a lot better, and that's because it came 3 years later. I'm pretty sure it's 3 years. So, it's more powerful than the Genesis. Now, I'm not counting the bazooka as anything, because even though the Genesis had the Miniser, and they had the Super Scope for the Super Nintendo, those are both pretty bad. Those are both atrocious, and don't buy either of them unless you're a really hardcore collector. So, the Super Nintendo, another great thing it has is an eject button, which the Genesis doesn't have, but you really don't need it because it doesn't hold on that hard. I'm having a hard time thinking about what Super Nintendo has that Genesis doesn't have. They do have a mouse. But yeah, that wasn't that. When did it have like one game for it? Mario Paint. So I think overall the Genesis was better, even though they had the Super Game Boy, which plugged right on top of it and could play Game Boy games on TV. But I don't know. Genesis, I think, it's a lot better. May not be as powerful, but a huge library. Looks a lot sharper, black. Sharp, yeah. And it just has add-ons that you can use. Lasted longer. I think the Genesis is a better system overall. So, thank you for watching my Genesis versus Super Nintendo video. I hoped you liked it, and you should also watch some of my other videos, because I even did one against Game Boy versus Game Gear.